an Egyptian military court has sentenced the country's former anti-corruption chief to 5 years in prison on charges of spreading false news harmful to the military. Hisham Geneena was arrested and put under investigation by the military prosecutor in February. Geneena was a member of Sami Anan's short-lived presidential campaign before the latter was detained and accused by the army of running for office without permission. Well, let's get you an update. CGTN's Adel El-Marouhi joins me now from our studios in Cairo. Adel, has there been any further clarity as to why Egypt's former anti-corruption chief has been jailed?
Hisham Geneena has been jailed right after he released some news in one of the regional media outlets. It was exactly after former probable candidate Sami Anan was arrested after he announced that he will be running against the Egyptian president. Sami Anan was officially arrested, according to an official statement from the armed forces, for deciding to run in a civilian presidential race without taking permission from the army. When Sami Anan was detained, at that time, Hisham Geneena, who was, as Sami Anan announced, was going to be his running mate, his vice president in the race, said that the former chief of staff, Sami Anan, has has held some secret files that would condemn the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces during the period they ruled the country after former President Mubarak stepped down in 2011. Right after the January uprising, President Mubarak stepped down, and since then, for a couple of years, the army was taking the role of the country. At that time, Sami Anan was chief of staff. Now, even after Sami Anan, from his son's statements and from other official statements during his detention, that says Sami Anan declines or has refused or did not said that these Geneena's notes of having secret files are not true. He denied these claims, but Mr. Geneena has insisted on his words, which the armed forces accordingly has taken him to a military court to investigate in that. Their argument is that these claims are false.
Well, as you were saying, Adnan, Hisham Geneena was part of a short-lived presidential campaign of former military chief of staff Sami Anan. Is there, do you think, a political connection then in this case?
Well, there has been some tension around Mr. Hisham Geneena way before the political ambition or the intention to run in the presidential candidacy, the presidential race, sorry. Just before that was several months, Mr. Geneena announced that there was, in the past 3 years of the country, the amount of corruption in Egypt would mount to about 600 billion Egyptian pounds. That's roughly around $20 billion, a huge number that he claims from his authority and his leadership to the Central Audit Authority, that this is the value of the corruption. Right afterwards, the government has denied these claims. They said that the figures are much lower than what Mr. Geneena has said. He has been deposed from his, sacked from his position, and since then he was more or less not a very welcomed person in terms of government relations. Now, the political ambition that came afterwards was another escalation against the government, and it has not been clearly put as that the political aspiration is the problem, because he was not arrested when Sami Anan was for running in the race. He was left alone in his house. Some court cases were filed against him, but he was not arrested. He was only arrested after releasing the information about the secret files, which the army insists was not true, and that's why he has been into jail. The official accusation is for inciting violence or hatred and spreading false news against the Egyptian military institution.
Okay, Adel El-Marouhi there in Cairo. Thank you for that update on the jailing of the former anti-corruption chief in Egypt.